the Islamic Republic delivered a hard slap to the face of America. It attacked one of America's key bases in the region, Al Udeid Air Base, and inflicted damage. If aggression occurs, the cost for both the enemy and the protester will certainly be high.
Professor of International Relations at the London School of Economics. Great to have you back, Fawaz. When Ali Khamenei says the American strikes achieved nothing, I'm guessing he could mean two things. It didn't achieve anything in terms of destruction of infrastructure, or it could mean it didn't achieve anything in terms of where Iran is heading.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think the second answer, what the Supreme Leader of Iran was saying is that Iran has a political will to resist. Iran has not surrendered, as President Trump asked Iran to surrender, unconditional surrender. Iran is a sovereign state. In fact, he addressed President Trump and he said, to ask Iran and the Iranian people for unconditional surrender, this is a much greater and bigger demand than you think. What he's really saying, to belittle the American president.
Domestically, who has more to lose here in terms of who they're talking to? One is a leader who will always have the backing of his base. The other one is leading an Islamic Republic, which many outsiders say is not universally popular.
Well, look, we all know that the Iranian government is not very popular with a large segment of the Iranian population, particularly young men and women, because the Iranian government has encroached on the personal liberties of Iranians. Young Iranians would like to live a freer life. They don't want the government to basically intervene in their daily lives. And we've seen hundreds of thousands of Iranians protesting over the past decade or so. But that's very different to say that the Iranian regime is on the verge of being toppled, of being collapsing. In fact, what we have seen in the past 2 weeks or so is that millions of Iranians rallied around the flag because Iranians feel that this is illegal war, this was an unjust war, this is a war by Israel and the United States against their nation, against their government, against their state. They're very proud people. So the reality is we should not, confuse the unpopularity with the Iranian regime with how the Iranian people responded to Israel's and American war on Iran.
What do you think the chances are of Iran actually now specifically trying to build a nuclear weapon? Because previously, and all the indications from intelligence agencies, as well as the Supreme Leader himself, was that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. But now, what is the likelihood that it will go for specifically that?
Well, Adnan, you're asking a very complex question, a very risky question, a very uncertain question. First of all, we do not know if the enriched uranium, the stockpile of weapons grade enriched uranium has survived, because there are conflicting reports on whether the enriched uraniums have been destroyed or still basically in safe places. Secondly, we do not really know how the infrastructure of the Iranian nuclear program, whether it was just damaged or destroyed. And thirdly, if I were in Tehran, I have to take into account the fact that if I really make a dash to weaponize my nuclear program, I could basically trigger all-out war with the United States, because everyone is watching Iran now, the Americans, the Europeans. So the reality is, even if the Iranian leadership would like to really weaponize its nuclear program now, I think it faces some very existential questions. And that's why my take is that the Iranian leadership will play for time. The Iranian leadership will try to weigh its options. And I think if you ask me, and I'm sorry I've spoken much longer than I should, if you ask me what are the priorities of the Iranian leadership, the priorities of the Iranian leaderships are to put their house in order, are to fill the vacuum of the leadership position in the security and military structure that were killed by Israel And thirdly, I think to really rebuild the bridges of trust with the Iranian people. And that's really what the Iranian president has been doing in the past 2 weeks, to appeal to young Iranians, to promise young Iranians and Iranians in general that what happened should really basically, deepen the ties that bind between the government and the Iranian people. So the priorities are domestic, as opposed to really basically thinking about nuclearizing or weaponizing its nuclear program.
Fawaz, you're not going to like this because I'm going to ask you for a bit more conjecture, but it's just regarding the timing. Is it coincidence now that the Israeli Prime Minister is talking about possibly building more bridges with Middle Eastern countries? He's hinting at the Abraham Accords. And what about the timing of this? Is it possible that Donald Trump has spoken to Benjamin Netanyahu and said, yeah, sure, I'll bomb Iran for you, but you need to give me something back? And obviously Gaza is part of the equation as well.
And this is not really speculation at all, Adnan. This is really what we know about Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. It's all about deals. It's all about calculations. It's all about what is it for me, for Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. I think the way we understand, the way we should read Benjamin Netanyahu, because Benjamin Netanyahu believes that raw military power is what matters. He keeps repeating and claiming that Israel is changing the face of the Middle East, that Middle Eastern countries will come to Israel and embrace Israel, military might, technological might, air defense capabilities. In fact, I read it entirely differently. More and more states in the Middle East, whether you're talking about Egypt or Turkey or Saudi Arabia now, look at Israel as a hegemon, acting as a mini imperial state, as a state that is really trying to dominate the Middle East, a tiny little state in the heart of the Middle East. So far from bandwagoning with Benjamin Netanyahu, I believe that the pivotal Middle Eastern state will most likely try to deter and counterbalance Israel in the next few months and next few years. But of course, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump will push very hard to convince, in particular, Saudi Arabia and Syria. They're really exerting a lot of pressure on Syria to normalize relations with Israel, and Israeli newspapers have basically reported on a potential deal between Israel and Syria through the United States, trying to basically formally normalize relations between the new Syrian regime and the Israeli government.
Professor Fawaz Gerges, thank you so much indeed.
Thanks.